Okay. Should start with so we get out of the way. So I'm doing my thesis on urban housing. Well, it's really about applying lessons from informal communities to vertical housing. And when I say informal communities, I'm referring to these large communities in Latin America, Eastern Asia, and places like that begin to grow in appropriations of land. And so people don't necessarily own the land, but they start developing and building on the land, and eventually they create these really interesting communities. And I'm trying to learn from them and kind of recreate that in a vertical housing project. And that's kind of the design application. It's a vertical housing. And I start my research, of course, with kind of doing a short history on the high-rise housing, and which, the very important part of that period is, mid-century, where all these projects, it was kind of the style to put people in these high-rises, in low-income housing high-rises, and what was wrong with that, and I'm, learning of what not to do in a way, and what sorts of things went well with these. And I have a couple of precedents that are actually surviving examples of mid-century high-rise. But this section is not really ready, so it's we'll move on to my next research, which is it's pronounced Paraisópolis. It's a favela, which is basically a slum. It's the word for slum in Brazil. They typically form in the hills, in the mountainside, because it's unoccupied usually. And Paraisópolis is really interesting because it's an informal community, right? But it grew in a very formal way. It grew in a grid, which is typically not the case for most informal communities. And it's also adjacent to one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Sao Paulo, which is Morumbi, which is where most of the wealth is. And if you can imagine living in this great mansion and having a view to a favela like this, and but it really ends up working because a lot of the people that live in this settlement work in the neighborhood that's adjacent, the wealthier neighborhoods that are adjacent, and they provide a lot of the services to these people. So it's kind of an interesting geographical concept. And then you can see here, you can kind of this picture is interesting. I used it to show the lessons that I've learned from this for the review of this literature, which I should say. This is a study done by the Urban Think Tank, which is started in Caracas, Venezuela, and it's headed by Alberto Brillenberg, and it's also in partnership with the municipality of the prefecture, which is kind of the government in Sao Paulo, the city of Sao Paulo, and the Columbia University. And I think also a group from MIT is in this research. And basically what they're doing is basically kind of what I'm doing is they're trying to learn from these communities. And their goal is to improve and kind of introduce infrastructure and things like that. And so I can finish in my 10 minutes here. There's a lot of things that I learned that are going to be applicable to what I want to do, and which is create social hubs, and use some kind of prefabrication, and provide natural light, just these basic things that people need for housing, and then provide stay near infrastructure and things like that. And then the next part of my research, it kind of goes into vertical housing. So and this is a book. It's called Vertical Villages, and it was published by the Y Factory. There's a lot of different people, collaborated to this, and basically the problem that they're dealing with. This is the bulk of this research is done in cities in Eastern Asia. This one is South Korea, for example. And what they're saying is that these urban villages, right? These ancient villages that have been in these locations for years or centuries, are now part of the urban context. So the high rises are getting to them, and the way the governments, let's say South Korea, is responding to that, and in other Eastern Asian cities, is they're taking them down and building these huge towers, blocks, city blocks of towers to kind of house people, and this source here kind of deals with that and tries to understand. And basically they were against the blocks, the city blocks and the housing blocks, and they're proposing a different way of doing it, a way that understands how these urban villages work and how and it kind of proposes a way to how they can grow. And the way they do this, it's by, and what's really interesting to me about this chart here is that these are qualities of these urban villages, right? And these qualities are what they use to evaluate what their solutions to the problem of housing, right? And it's what's truly interesting about it is that it's in ways it's contradicting. Let's say density and individuality, as you say, there are two contradicting concepts, but and they're saying here that in order for a community to be successful, it has to accommodate both of these principles, which I think is really interesting, and it's something that I plan to incorporate into my design also. And then here are the lessons learned. And like I said, it's about those the principles, and things begin to repeat themselves, like natural light and creating social hubs and preventing social alienation, or trying to prevent alienation between the neighbors and stuff. And some of them are just basic, like provide emergency egress, in these informal communities. And then it moves on to my precedents, which this is an example of mid-century high-rise housing, and it's no one's French here, so I can pronounce it the way it's in Paris, and it's pronounced Bois le Portrait. And I won't say that again. And basically, it's had 3 different lives so far, and it started on the left, and it's an aluminum clad and glass, very Mies van der Rohe kind of idea, and then it moves on the 1980s. They added insulation to the glass, so it's because it wasn't energy efficient. It kind of came in a became not ideal. And then recently in 2006 they added this, which I present here, this renovation, which is really interesting. They listened to the people that live there already, and they kept this as a housing project, even though this neighborhood nowadays is really desirable in Paris. And what they did is they removed the previous facades, and in phases they implemented this new facade, which adds kind of a winter garden and a balcony to every apartment, and expands their living space. And it also, there's more, they added the square footage all around the building. And this works both as a double skin and, for natural ventilation and from shielding from the cold and et cetera. And then this is kind of what it looks like on the inside. And you can see it has great views, so it's really a great location. And it's good that they kept it as a housing project still. And then this is Park Hill. It's in England, in northern England, and it's recently been. It's also a product of 1950s mid-century housing project. And it's recently been purchased by developers, and it's being redeveloped as 2/3 what do you call, like yuppie housing, I would say, and then 1/3 housing, low-income housing. So it's it's kind of an interesting mix. And the original facade is on the right, and it's kind of a brick with and then the new facade is the glass with the anodized aluminum panels that are the colors that you see there. But they kept pretty much the same scheme. And this is a pretty basic kind of Corbusian understanding of housing. Circulation is every 3rd floor, and there are these open-aired streets, what they call, that people circulate through the building. So it works in a way, and it's interesting, but it didn't work at this specific location. And then the remodel, this is the interior of the apartment. So clearly they were kind of marketing to a more affluent crowd. But as you can see, there's nice views. It's a good location. But it's an interesting precedent. And then my next precedent is Torre David. Torre David is also a study by the Urban Think Tank. It's a documentary, it's a book, it's a lecture series, and it's a tower. It's a commercial office tower in the financial center of Caracas, Venezuela. And in the 1990s, when Venezuela went through their financial crisis, this construction was abandoned, and then in the 2000s, people with I don't know if everyone's familiar with the history of politics in Venezuela, but Hugo Chavez is kind of a let's say he says that he's okay with appropriation of land. He thinks that public or private land is land of the people, and people should be able to take advantage of it. So this is a case of that, and it was an abandoned tower for a decade, and then one day these people started coming in and taking up the floors and creating community. And today it's one of the most successful kind of squats, high-rise squats in the world, and to me it's really interesting. As you can see here, people have created on their own. They have created this cooperative. So it's again goes back to contradiction, where it's a squat, but it's also a gated community. So it's a co-op, and you can see the little blue right at the bottom there. You can see my arrow here. This is the entrance, right? So it's really secure, and the co-op will approve whether or not your family can move in, and then there in every floor there are shops, and there are sports facilities. There are religious space for religious. There's a church. And what's also interesting about this project is that most of the people are of the same religion, so they all belong to the same church that meets at this right here on the blue here, if you can see at the bottom there. And again, there's some of the things that I learned from this this precedent in particular, and it's to encourage entrepreneurialism, so allowing people to really invest in where they live. And that's what creates community, and encourage people to get organized, encourage people to invest sweat equity into their place, right? So encourage them to make it better, and that would reach the benefit. And this is this is one of the shops in the tower, and you can see that she sells. I think this is a paper goods kind of shop, and candy and things like that. So a little convenience store. And you can see on the wall here where people have made holes to the original structure to where they can start connecting the different spaces. And you can see the materials here, the red clay brick, which is a common building material because it's cheap. And you see that a lot in the slums, favelas, or barrios, which that's what they call them in Venezuela, using this kind of material to build for them. And you can see here that a lot of it's a shell of a building, and a lot of there's no rails or anything like that, and people just kind of dwell in that. And in some cases, they've created kind of makeshift barriers so people don't fall into don't fall off But there have been some fatal fatalities. And you can see one of the dwelling here. And you can see there's a bedroom, and people have electricity and water. Well, they've created an electrical system and a sewage and water. So they've implemented those into the shell of the building. And this is what the Urban Think Tank is kind of thinking of how they can grow, help this community kind of implement improvements and help this community develop, grow, and by implementing more vertical circulation. Right now, they're only take the stairs. There's no elevators. There's only one stair to that main building there that you see. So they're introducing another vertical element here for circulation, and here and here and here, and they're introducing solar power and wind power to improve the living conditions and more possibilities for entrepreneurialism, more shops and things like that to improve with this precedent. And this is it for my presentation. And what I'm trying to do is really learn from these examples and implement what I've learned into a urban housing, low rise housing building in Wilmington, Delaware. Not quite there yet, but we'll get there in a bit. And that's it. Any questions?
Okay, we've got time for questions. Well, I've got a comment. I think your approach for me is clear, and for me the nub of it is how effective you're going to be in harvesting these lessons from informal communities, and then how thoroughly you employ them in the design of your scheme. To me, that's where the research meets the design exercise. So when you're done, I'm going to be particularly interested in that connection. Did you clarify? Sorry, I missed. I thought it started at 12:30.
So that.
Did you clarify how you're going to deal with codes and safety?
Yeah, since these are examples outside of the U.S. and U.S. has strict codes, but my design does plan to address code like fire safety and egress. So incorporate that into the design, but it still allow from some kind of what do you call indeterminate. This borrowing a word from Professor Ott's, indeterminate developing and design. So I'm hoping to provide a framework and some kind of a structure to where people can design their own housing in a high-rise form on their own with the help of kind of but using that framework. I've thought about using maybe timber construction and let's say concrete cores that support all the services and circulation, and using timber and things like that to as the material for the
I'm a little bit confused. In your precedent studies, they were all of those were existing buildings that were repurposed, right?
Yeah.
Are you not planning to do the same thing?
No, I'm planning to use an existing site where things are already there in this community and kind of begin to grow. So the idea is not it's not to present a design, but to begin to write a narrative to where something grows and it's vertical, right? So
But it may start with the building.
Yeah,
it's already.
Mm-hmm. These are row houses, so there would be they would incorporate what's already there and begin to grow further.
Okay, and you already have a place in mind?
Yeah, Wilmington, Delaware. It's
sorry, I missed.
It's kind of a good place and kind of analogous to every place. It's got some
Is there a reason that you've chosen this?
That's where I live.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Yuri, you said there is something on the site or not?
Yeah,
There's structure on the site?
The fabric of the neighborhood is they're row houses. Some of are dilapidated, some are kind of slumlords, you would say, in poor condition. So yeah, it would kind of take it, say this is the block that this building is going to grow in, and it's going to maybe save some of the houses that are well, and take down some of the ones that are precarious, and start to grow grow from there. And it doesn't really, it's not that it's gonna reference that style or anything, it's just gonna, kind of create a platform above that and begin to grow from that.
What do you mean by growth?
So if you think of it like kind of like a, it's like a narrative. So it starts with a house, and then somebody said, "Oh, my cousin's moving in, so I need this space." So it grows here, and then it says, "My friend needs a place to stay, and there's this structure, so we're gonna build here," and then it begins to grow like that. Rather than me presenting the final, what the final it will look like, I'll present what it could possibly look like if it follows this narrative. You know what I mean?
No.
That's the fear of every thesis student.
I mean, that's because the examples that you presented are existing structures. If you talk about growth, the cousin is coming, the grandmother is coming, there are plenty of examples of that, of houses that have been sort of grown that way. When you're presenting a 190-meter precedent, which is not something that can grow that way. Structurally speaking, no matter what narrative we tell them, there has to be a structural skeleton that will hold all of this. This is why your narrative is not very clear.
I think that the precedent, I think, that you guys are talking about is the mid-century precedents, right? The two examples of.
What are you showing?
Well, there were two mid-century housing projects that have been rehabilitated into new buildings. And then there's the Torre de Ville, which is the towers that people have squatted in the past. And it's gonna be a blend of both, and what I'm providing is the framework for a growing community. So I'm not providing the skeleton of the building, I'm providing, kind of the services and the infrastructure and the way that it could grow.
My question is similar to Professor Watson. So Professor Robbins, to me, is still very unclear. So a couple related. When you're saying applying lessons, are these lessons for the homeowner to do the growing, or for an architect who's doing the growing?
The architect is doing the guiding, so we're and providing these opportunities for community.
So but you made it sound like it's
a collaborative. So the designer and the homeowner work together. Let's say in this, it's part of this nonprofit, right? They develop the site, and there's a cooperative, like a group of people that are in charge of deciding what happens in the site, and they've agreed to the basic parameters. Let's say that this is how it's going to grow.
Does the site have structures on it? Yes or no? Does it have structures that are being adapted, or is it a clear site and you're deciding what's on the site?
No, it's not clear. There are structures that are going to be adapted to the.
And the adaptation is done by as an architect.
No, they stay as they are, and then you kind of grow around it.
Who's going to do the
Who's
growing?
going to do the growing?
The architect, or are you going to let the people do it?
The architect. So it's kind of like.
So you think that you can do something better than the favelas, for example, as an architect?
No, it's not better. It's really learning from them and really being interested on how they were able to, by squatting and not having any resources, right? How they were able to create such rich environments that really a lot of architects aren't able to replicate, right? Like there's not rich communities like that, planned communities.
That seam between what the architect does and when the occupants take over, to me, that's something that you're exploring in the thesis. What is that division, and when do you stop doing your thing as a designer, and when do you just say, okay, the infrastructure's there, here's a kit of parts or whatever, and the occupants are gonna take over.
There are some examples of that. In Brazil, there are some examples of government projects in which they provided a room that has a kitchen and a bathroom, plumbing, electricity, and a room that it's living room, dining room, sleeping room, everything, and then the rest is left for the owner. So you're providing the basic structure. Is that the kind of direction that you think you're going to do here, or is the architect constantly being consulted for, we're going to put a bathroom over there. I need some help at least in the structural, the electrical, the plumbing. the utilities aspect. That's
So
what's not clear from you right now.
it's so it won't be where there's if everyone gets assigned a space, right? So it wouldn't. That's not what I've envisioned. I've envisioned it's something that when you first come in, you're assigned a space, and maybe you're living in a tent in the space, and you're using a communal kitchen or something like that, or or maybe it is like you're saying. There's a small part of it that's already built, and then they were able to grow from there. But the first step is just to have a basic, and then when you look at the same space, 5 months or 5 years from that point, it begins to it doesn't have that shape anymore.
What is the basic?
The basic would be the things that need plumbing and
So it is, the example I'm telling you, not.
well, or there could be a shared, it could be everybody gets their own kitchen, or it could be there's a main communal kitchen where eventually they'll build their own kitchen, but for the beginning they'll share that.
Gotta shut this one down and go to the next one. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Christian Reyes. The title of my thesis currently is Revitalizing the Red Hook, New York, Architecture Influence on the Urban Fabric. You might be asking, why Red Hook, New York? Well, there's a lot of issues currently happening there. It's very disconnected from the city. It is located in Brooklyn. It has a reputation as a dangerous and very high crime area. It's not a place where you drive around at night. There's a lot of vacant lots. It's very abandoned in a way compared to what New York City really is. Some of the history of Red Hook, New York, it got its name from the red soil back in 1636. And the reason why it's called Hook, because of its hooking onto the river on the bottom east lower corner of the site. I started off with a thesis diagram in order to outline what I wanted to go ahead and do. Of course, my site is Red Hook, New York. Some of the issues I wanted to correct was it doesn't have an identity, so I wanted to go ahead and give an identity to the site. Connections to the city. There's really no bus. There's no train. There's not even ferries. There's very limited transportation right now on the site, and social interaction. I wanted to, as I was reading my literature reviews, I came upon these principles, these architectural principles such as identity, adaptability, diversity, and I wanted to implement those principles into creating a structure where it's kind of like the beacon, a landmark on Red Hook, New York, where people could go. It's kind of a downtown feel, and that's going to give my solution, creating this identity onto the site. These are 9 principles: identity, accessibility, diversity, open space, compatibility, incentives, adaptability, density, and sustainability. Currently right now, this is some of the site analysis that is on the site. There's a lot of vacant lots, very industrial. Food availability is very low, medical facility as well. There's parks and recreation space, but it's unused and it's all fenced in, unwelcoming, and I want to change that. These are the views from the site. These are what I consider priceless views. This is what people go to New York City to go look at. You have the Statue of Liberty, you have the Freedom Tower where the World Trade Center is. You have Governor's Island, Staten Island, and Ellis Island literally right in front of your face on that site. It's being blocked by industrial housing, industrial warehouses that are abandoned, and also there's near the waterfront. There's no park. There's no place to go and walk. It's all just abandoned docks, because years ago it used to be a place where all the ships used to come, and this was the main dock for New York City until mid-1800s. It got relocated to New Jersey, so that kind of led the whole abandonment, and it started going down from there on point to the present. By creating a new identity, I wanted to, like I was saying, I want to create this, what I call right now the Gateway Center. This is a building where it's going to be near the waterfront, where it's gonna be the heart of Red Hook. This is gonna be the beating pulse. In order to have this building, I wanted to create a foundation that it's not just, I didn't want to create a building that is just on one location of the site. I wanted to help the whole entire site, the whole entire neighborhood, and so I wanted to implement a master plan which all combines to my building, and without the building, the master plan does not work. By creating my master plan, some of the stuff that I implemented are waterfront park, cruise station that's already there by revamping it, adding ferry stations, connections to the park, the walks at Red Hook. I'll get into more detail later on about that, and then some more parking instead of on-street parking. Starting with the waterfront park, I want to create a lot of open space. Right now, like I was saying, as you can see all this blue, this is what I want to create. I want to create a connection between this whole entire waterfront. Just like as you can see a picture right here of a president in Ecuador, and this is actually a proposal right across the bay in New York City that they're trying to do near Battery Park. They're just trying to connect the waterfront with greenery, nature, give it a place where, a sense of place where you could go there, go for a jog, read a book. I want to have this going on at Red Hook. Currently, there is a cruise station there. I don't know how many of you guys been on cruises, but when you go on a cruise, you go on vacation. This is a place where you start the excitement. You're going on to relax. Right now, it's fenced in. It's private. You cannot go in there unless you have a ticket. And it's like going to a parking lot. There's no welcoming signs. There's nothing going on. So what I want to create is a public place where it's public majority of the time, and then there's certain areas where ticket holders that are going onto the cruise could only access. But majority, instead of it all being fenced in right now, how it is, where people can't walk or they can't go into the area, I want to make that into a park. Down here, you see in Japan, this is a proposal that they have going on. This is a cruise station that has a park, and is also it's open to the public, and it also has some private areas where only ticket holders can go. This is actually another proposal on the other side of Brooklyn that they're trying to create another cruise station over there, and thinking about getting rid of this one, so they want to implement parks, which it connects right here to my waterfront park. The ferry stations, currently there is a ferry station in the site. It's IKEA. There's an IKEA on the site, lower bottom right here corner. Good idea what IKEA started. I want to go ahead and build on that idea. Like I said in the beginning, there's Statue of Liberty, you got Ellis Island, you got the World Trade Center. Right now, if you want to go see those places close and personal, you have to drive all the way around or take a train or a taxi all the way to the other side of the city. Why not come to this part of the city, hop on the ferry, get onto the Statue of Liberty, which is literally right there, or what I want to do is create this physical connection to the rest of the city with these ferry stations. And these are some of the precedents. This is actually this ferry station in Staten Island. This is the ferry station in the World Trade Center. Now the parks, I do want to have these connections. I want to add more greenery onto the site. Right now, it doesn't have too much nature going on. The park's currently there. There's a multi-use complex park over here, which holds like baseball fields, soccer fields, but it's fenced in. It's all fenced in. In New York City, that's just how it is because of the way it's always been built for many years. You have everything fenced in. Here in Florida, everything's all pretty much open. You see the grass, you just go onto the park, you park, and you just start going off for a jog. It's more welcoming, more inviting. I want to bring that concept onto the site. The walks. This is inspired by Las Ramblas in Barcelona. You'll see two pictures of Las Ramblas pretty much. I want to create this main access, which is right here. And I want to create this area where people could come. Don't worry about cars. They could just walk. It's going to be mixed use. It's going to be there's going to be two buildings on each side. First floor on each side of the buildings is going to be retail, restaurants, mixed use, and the upper levels is going to be residential, so people could live there, right in Red Hook. And this is what I call the spine of my site, because this is going to lead you to my building, which is a gateway center. So this starts this experience when you get there. You just walk and you go get a bite to eat. And it just gives you connections to the whole entire site, to this waterfront park, to the ferry station, the cruise station, the parks. And of course, it's going to bring more traffic. Right now, the on-street parking is not going to be enough, so I want to create more parking garages in the area, and I don't just want to create a standard parking garage. I want to give life to it. So at nighttime, people can go there. They know it's a safe place. And this is the site location. The site is located right near the waterfront. I want to create this building that kind of, once you get there, it's going to be an entertainment hub where it has movie theaters, bars, restaurants, some retail, and pretty much tourism could go there. I have a ferry station right next to it so that you could just hop onto the ferry, go to the site. I also want to be able to have viewing angles from the building where you can go up to the 3rd, 4th, 5th floor, and you can just see the whole entire city of New York City, which to me is a priceless view, why people go there. And this is going to be what's bringing the life to this entire site. Also, down here, these are some concepts this is a proposal for a project that they did in Japan. You can see these two structures. I do not want to block, because this right here is the walks. And as you're walking too, I do not want to block you with a building right in front of it. So what I want to create is these two structures, these two buildings, that they kind of welcome you into the waterfront, and then also welcome you with the water coming in. You can just sit down, grab a bite to eat, and it creates this social interaction on Red Hook that it creates this identity that's not there right now presently. And that concludes my presentation. That's where I'm at right now.
Why?
I was born and raised in New York City, and I don't know, I just always wanted to do something to kind of give back in a way. And I always knew Red Hook was an area where when you go to New York, you say Red Hook, you don't go there. So it's kind of.
It's because it's crime, and
Yes, and it's also because, well, it's like that on purpose because, I mean, we have dark alleys, when you have areas that are fenced in, we have areas where it's all abandoned buildings, literally the windows are all out, kind of like in Harlem. Well, now they're kind of re-entering Harlem. I kind of want to start doing that here.
but do you think that if you could possibly re-implement some of this, do you think that would change?
Yeah, there is actually, New York City is changed a lot. Right across here from all these residential, this used to be exactly how it is. This is actually all new residential. And I want to kind of connect that in a way, not just to that side of the city, but the rest of the city. I wanted to connect, physically with the ferries. You can just go to the other side of Manhattan. There's a lot of people, New York can take the subways everywhere. You don't really drive a car too much because parking is always a pain to find parking. But here, literally, there's only one bus station and 20-minute walk to a train. That's unheard of in New York City. Usually, there's a train stop every two streets. So I feel like this needs to be fixed. This is I feel like the views that are there are priceless. I feel this is a good site where I can create a gateway, which is what I want to call, because this is where, with the history, a lot of all the ships used to come in, used to drop off their shipments, and they used to distribute all the way to New York. And they kind of abandoned that. It's all industrial now. So, and a lot of the industrial warehouses are all abandoned.
Do you have any studies of other urban areas that are similar to this that have been revitalized through certain moves that you're looking to?
I do. There's actually a lot going on right now in New York. I didn't present it on this PowerPoint because I thought I was going to do it right at the time. I do have it on my boards. Right across the bay, by the Brooklyn Bridge, they're actually making a waterfront park. Just with nothing but trees, greenery, and then they're making these high rises to kind of, because right now there's nothing there. It's just a highway. So they're actually doing a lot of it in New York City. There's a lot going on of this type of style, re-entering the whole entire.
So how is yours different? What's your opinion on it?
Well, mine's not any different. They just didn't do it on this location.
I like you spoke a little bit fast,
Yeah.
but I was ready to sign the check. I mean, it's great, you're excited. I mean, you're doing something that's really, I can envision this thing. I think that's one of the positive aspects of your presentation. You're really excited, you believe in this thing. I can just see it, you know, big commercial center with the like mixed use by the waterfront there, just you know, tall buildings, just lots of, I can just see it in New York, just tons of people. There's a ton of people there. So it could work. You just build this thing, and basically your argument could be, it's not just fixing, it's just creating this thing, and then people will come because you're creating this very exciting thing. And because of the mass of people that are in this area, then, and I think, and you emphasize that the views, it's a very special place, you know, and one thing that would help maybe your presentation is, I know you show the map, but maybe do a close-up of where you just show your site and do like maybe arrows to the different sites, because it's right there. I mean, it's beautiful. You can look at all of that. And it's very much in the culture in New York to just what people do on the weekend. If they can't afford to go ski in Vermont, they just go hang out in the city. So this will be a place like that. People could go there on the weekend and just hang out and just, you know, go see a movie, go, you know, then you eat dinner or whatever. And also one thing that would help your presentation, I think, is take a little bit more time to talk about the site in terms of, say right now there's IKEA, which is a very important thing because it's the only commercial drive to the site. The only reason people go there is because they take the ferry to go to IKEA. And so that's kind of the end of your walk there. And then the other end is the waterfront, which is where you're gonna create all this excitement, like mixed use, you know, just entertainment, everything. And so I would just, if you can add that in your presentation, so that people, it's missing a little bit of something that we get a better grasp on the site and kind of what you're doing. And then also, yes, talk about what's next to the site when you see they're building new homes, and that's important. I mean, basically, New York is growing, they'll need more room anyway, so this is all gonna be transformed eventually. So, but I think, I really like the fact that the PowerPoint looks great. I mean, it's nice to see that you're excited about the project. I can just see it, you know, you have the precedents are, I think it's clear enough that we can see you, and you kind of talk like a developer in a positive way.
There are a couple of things, I'm sorry. One suggestion, like, and two questions. One suggestion, when you talk about it next time, Chris, try to explain why in reference to your literature or the lessons. Because I think you went through, this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what's gonna happen, this is what I want, this is what I want. But next time, try to either in an image up there say, because according to so-and-so, this is a good thing. So it's not a list of all the stuff you want, but according to my research, my precedent. So I'm doing a walk, I know it's a good thing, and I know it's like, what's wrong? But why are you, according to so-and-so, so then okay, so why?
I think the form that takes, to me, you have it sitting there, you've got those principles you said you wanted to apply. I think it's just making the connection between your principles and your design. And part of that, to me, is pushing into the principles a little more. To me, your design, your application is way out in front of your scholarship. At least it comes across that way here. And I'd like to see your scholarship catch up, which is spending some time with the principles and then showing how you're using them. Maybe even specifically geographically. Here's where I'm going to concentrate on identity. Here's where I'm going to concentrate on this. So you map your principles onto your scheme.
And that would answer the question for me. So it's not what are you proposing, but how.
One of the things that, just to add to in his defense, is that he's working on that.
Yeah.
And no, the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation that he's going to use for his final is not this one.
Oh yeah, I'm just saying
Which means that material is part of it is already over there. It just didn't get translated for today.
So it's just a reminder in the future. So it's not two questions. The other question, my big question to look at then for the future is, I think you need to address what are you doing with the thousands and thousands of public housing people already there. Because I would assume that is what's those L-shaped structures in the green field, right?
Yeah, they're still staying there. Because what I did with the walks, there's actually 5 blocks that are maybe vacant, so I'm not really taking any housing out.
Well, I think dealing with one, I think that, if, I think have an answer for how you're dealing with that, because you can say, there's land and someone owns land and then people live on land. So, you know, you're gonna have to come up with an answer, because that's why that's why things don't happen overnight. And how are you gonna address that? So there's what, 10,000 people living there, and you can't just snap your fingers and say, I really don't want you to be there anymore. But that's, this is America.
So we can do that. You know, actually, one of the issues that is not in this PowerPoint, and it goes back to one of my comments, is that for the first time that I've been talking to you, you used the word spine for the wall, which is a very good word. And that's the word that you should sort of utilize and build upon. Because that spine becomes later on a street, and from there there's a series of connections that establish. They go to the existing neighborhoods, and one of them is yours, and that's where he needs to address that issue. You know, when it starts connecting that old public housing into what you are doing, so it becomes an intrinsic part of your record as opposed to that.
I think it'd be good in that vein to, at some point, have a map that just shows your pedestrian movement systems, to show how you're reaching out with your network and how it all funnels into your spine.
The other thing that you mentioned that you start talking a little bit is the circulation, and we have talked a lot about this, of the transportation, public transportation. And one of the things that you are not emphasizing probably enough is the ferry stops. Now, this is a totally new experience. People have the positive sort of attitude towards IKEA with the ferry. Now, let's build a red hook with the ferry. And think about how cool is that? You can go anywhere in the upper bay, you know, with a ferry. You can go to all of these places that you are connected. So the connection doesn't happen through metro, train, buses. It happens on the water. Great sort of approach.
I want to compliment you too on your PowerPoint. It's very professional, very slick, and very easy to follow.
Very developer.
Very developer. Yeah, not slick in a suspicious way, slick in a followable way.
Yeah.
But I think just about like, Andrew was asking why. I think your why is, part of it is, this is a great site and it's underutilized right now. And I think you have to present it as an opportunity there to create something really great for the city of New York and for the surrounding cities. But don't say, well, I'm just trying to fix things. I mean, just make it a bigger picture. You're trying to create something great.
I think in both, go back to Yuri, in both, and it's gonna be in everyone's, there are challenges which
No.
you need to recognize, and you need to, the reality is that there are, as Rod says, building code rules, and you can't do things. So I think you guys need to at least recognize them, so it doesn't look like you're ignoring them.
Yeah, I think that's very important, and that's why, I appreciate that Christain is working through the urban design of the whole Red Hook area before he addresses his site, because his site is gonna have implications in the whole Red Hook area. And he's building up, I hope, by the time that his presentation is done, his thesis is done, he will have enough information to incorporate existing conditions, all the new developments that are required for the city of New York, the incorporation of the low-income housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And the benefit of, when you do your proposal, I think that your individual thing doesn't have to fix all the stuff over there. So I think that's gonna, I think that would end up being the bigger problem if it stays as an urban design proposal versus your building architectural proposal. It doesn't have to solve this social context issue that's 5 blocks away, but I think you just at least say that's a challenge of implementation. It's not my job to fix it, but I know enough about my context to know where the hurdles are. Not that you're.
All right, it's time to bring this to a close. Thank you, Tiffany. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
but I really, it's not your job